All right. So Giri unfortunately couldn't make it. There's a slightly better resolution picture of him. He asked me to fill in and go through some of his slides. Actually, a lot of these you've already seen in several of the preceding talks, and maybe you'll see more of them when Simon gives his talk as well. So Giri is part of the Cavium team working on ThunderX2. It is the processor that is in a number of the forthcoming platforms, including the one mentioned earlier from HPE. In fact, these slides, I think, were originally given at the HP Cast event just prior to ISC. So Cavium is one of ARM's many silicon partners. They've been in the market for many years. They were MIPS architecture before they transitioned to ARM. They had their ThunderX1 system was one of the early ARM server entries, and in that system they really pushed the bounds on core count and multi-socket and a bunch of interesting areas. So they've got sort of a track record of leading in technology creation areas, and now with ThunderX2, they're bringing another high-performance server to market, and are sort of on the leading edge of some of those activities. You guys already know all about that. So, reading from the speaker notes, Cavium is perfectly positioned to address the performance and feature demands of HPC. And a lot of that comes, as a company, they've got a lot of experience in networking, right? And in networking throughput, which of course is very important in both data analytics and high performance computing, and they're really trying to leverage that in the HPC market. Their original server entry was launched in 2014, and it really did lead the way in a number of areas. So ThunderX2, which is their new entry. These are much higher performance cores, as we'll get to in a second. Fully out of order ARM v8, multi-socket configurations. One of the things where this platform really stands out, and as you've seen in some of the results earlier, is it has an incredible amount of memory bandwidth. And it's one of the things that makes it quite competitive in a number of spaces, but in particular, data analytics and high-performance computing. It's got all of the server-class virtualization features that are part of ARM v8 and a number of RAS features as well. So from a performance comparison, and I truly don't know what the incumbent server CPU is here, but they have a larger core count. Each core has up to 4 threads. So you have a truly gigantic number of hardware threads available on a dual socket system. Again, super high memory bandwidth from the 8 memory channels, which also gives them a ton of memory capacity. And the SoC has been configured with a healthy amount of PCIe, which is good for all forms of I/O, whether it's network communication or storage or GPUs or whatever. So they've been actively involved in establishing the necessary ecosystem. We've been talking a lot today about software ecosystem. Cavium have been involved in that. They do a lot of that through collaboration. They collaborate with John at Red Hat. They collaborate with the SUSE guys. They've been involved in OpenHPC. They donated a bunch of hardware to the OpenHPC folks so that we could set up a regression cluster at TAC for OpenHPC, which was one of the critical things to get us as being a first-class member and participant in that community and getting out the first releases. They've been diligent about following all of those standards that John was talking about earlier this morning. So in many cases with ThunderX2, things just work. And they have been pretty active in upstreaming their stuff back into the community so that it's fully supported. And they've been working both with the open source community and with ARM on optimized compilers and development environment, and working across the ecosystem with the other sort of things you would expect to find in cluster management tools and the Alinea tools and so forth. All right, so this is viewed as the progression of their developments, which they started with ThunderX. ThunderX had a number of deployments, including Sandia, as Jim mentioned earlier, as well as the Hartree Center here in the UK and Barcelona Supercomputing Center in Oak Ridge. ThunderX2 has already had several announced procurements, which we mentioned earlier, such as the Mont Blanc prototype and the GW4 machine, which Simon's going to be talking about a little later. And it's also the processor that's in HP's machine prototype, which is also a very interesting architecture, which incorporates the Gen Z technology and a number of other things. So it's really nice. ThunderX2 is really leading the charge on deployments in this space and letting people really kick the tires on ARM in production and semi-production environments. And as the graphs kind of show, the ThunderX2 is a significant improvement across a number of different areas of the machine architecture, making it a much more competitive system in this space and a big step forward. All right, so there's a number of graphs here, and there's no speaker notes. So I may not be able to give you good details on them. Some of you may know the answers better than I do of what they're actually showing. My interpretation of these are single core results, and they're all normalized. Your best bet is to follow up with the Cavium guys if you're interested in more detailed information on it, or maybe they'll show up in later slides as well. So starting off with stream performance, as I said, I think one of the first things that people notice when they run on this system is it has an incredible amount of memory bandwidth. And they're able to saturate fairly quickly, getting to peak bandwidth while running the stream benchmark. They've got fairly smooth scaling on GEM and SGEM and DGEM. They're able to, in their test configurations, because they have all that memory bandwidth, especially when you're running single core, they're able to get very close to the theoretical peak that the hardware can provide. And it's the same basic story for SGEM. And you saw the numbers earlier that Chris Goodyear was able to extract on the GEM routines as well. So some of this stuff has been independently verified by others, and there was results that Jim showed as well. So from an HPL thing again, as you load up the system, you get fairly smooth performance. There's no real plateauing here. They go right up into the theoretical peak that the processors are able to do on all these benchmarks. Now on real applications, this is LAMPS. Oh, and there's even an animation. I didn't even know that when I was looking at the slides before. All right. LAMPS is, again, taking advantage of the high memory bandwidth on the platform. So this isn't, so this one is different than what I was saying before for sure, because they're talking about core count here. The large core count combined with a high memory throughput, they're able to get a fairly good peak performance, as you can see. I guess, what did I do with that pointer, right? That's 120 up there, so they're able to get very close to 100% of the expected peak on the system. And that was all the slides that Giri had, so we'll probably go short and get some time left. Is there any questions on ThunderX2?